Welcome to Reformed Thinking. Picture this. You wake up on a Tuesday morning and the alarm on your phone did not go off because, some background software update failed in the middle of the night.
Oh, yeah, the classic glitch.
Right. So because you were rushing, you knock your coffee mug off the counter. It completely shatters.
That is the worst way to start a day.
It really is. So you spend 5 minutes cleaning up all this glass and, dark roast, which means you leave the house 10 minutes later than usual.
Yep.
Because you are 10 minutes late, you hit a very specific pocket of traffic on the highway. And because of that traffic, you miss the first 15 minutes of a massive presentation at work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And because you miss that introduction, your boss hands a major new project to your coworker instead of you.
That hurts.
And it gets worse. That single project ends up catapulting your coworker to a promotion 6 months later. It alters their entire career trajectory, and it leaves you stuck in your current role.
All because of a phone update.
Precisely. Now, I want you, listening right now, to pause and think about that chain of events. When you look at the mechanics of your own life, do you just assume it is all running on some sort of chaotic autopilot?
Most of us do, yeah.
We have this expectation that the universe is just a giant machine. The gears turn, gravity does its thing, and we are all just dodging asteroids hoping we do not get hit.
It is a terrifying way to live, honestly, when you stop to consider the sheer volume of variables at play every single second.
Right.
We crave predictability. We want things to be categorical. We want to believe that standard physical laws govern the day and that any deviation from our plans is just a statistical anomaly.
Like just a glitch in the matrix.
Yeah, we call it bad luck, or we call it a tough break. But viewing the universe through that hyper-materialist lens leaves us feeling incredibly exposed.
It really does. So today we are taking a deep dive into some massive concepts drawn from John Calvin's writings on Providence.
Yes, we are.
And the mission for you today is to grasp the sheer, staggering difference between a universe run by cold, unfeeling natural laws and a universe that is intimately, actively governed by a deliberate creator.
It is a huge paradigm shift.
It is. We have a stack of historical theology and scriptural analysis in front of us. And the core goal of these writings is to completely dismantle the pagan ideas of chance or fortune.
Calvin pulls no punches on this.
He does not. He argues for a continuous, detailed regulation of every atom, every weather pattern, and yes, every spilled cup of coffee.
Every single drop.
So as we walk through this material, ask yourself, how do you actually view the daily events of your life? Are you just lucky, or is there a script?
Well, Calvin draws a massive line in the sand right out of the gate. He begins by contrasting two very different views of God.
Okay, let us hear them.
On one side, you have the philosophical idea of a momentary creator. And on the other side, you have the biblical view of an everlasting governor and preserver.
A momentary creator.
Yeah. It is a highly popular concept, even today. It is the notion that God finished the work of creation, stepped back, and is now, basically sitting in the bleachers watching the universe spin on its own axis.
Let us unpack what Calvin calls the carnal sense. That is a piece of theological jargon that gets thrown around a lot.
It does.
When he says carnal, he is not talking about something scandalous. He means fleshly or limited strictly to what human beings can observe with their 5 physical senses.
Right. The stuff we can touch and measure.
Yeah, it is this sort of post-enlightenment materialism where you look at nature and you assume there is simply a universal energy that was bestowed at the very beginning of time.
Just a spark.
Right. You assume that initial spark is the only thing sustaining the cosmos today.
Spot on. The carnal sense is driven by human logic that stops at the most basic level of observation. You can look at the stars or the Rocky Mountains or, the sheer scale of the Pacific Ocean, and you could acknowledge an intelligent author.
Sure, you see the design.
Right. A person operating purely on carnal sense sees the massive capability required to accomplish such handiwork. But that is where the analysis ends.
It stops right there.
Yeah, it contemplates a general preserving activity, assuming the force of motion derives entirely from a single past event. It acknowledges a creator, but denies a governor.
I am trying to picture how this actually looks in practice. It makes me think of someone winding up a mechanical toy.
Oh, that is a good way to put it.
You know those little tin robots with the metal key in the back?
Yeah, the vintage ones.
Right. The carnal view of God is like a person who winds that key up as tight as it will go, sets the robot on the hardwood floor, and walks out of the room.
Leaving it entirely alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
The toy marches across the floor, its arms swinging, but the creator is no longer involved. The energy was divinely bestowed from the beginning, but now the toy is just operating on its own internal physics.
That analogy captures the philosophical view perfectly. But Calvin argues that the lens of faith must penetrate much further than the hardwood floor.
Further than the mechanics.
Yes. Faith sees God not as a spectator of a wound-up toy, but as a master musician.
Okay, I like that.
Consider a skilled cellist playing a symphony. The music only exists in the room because the musician is actively, continuously bowing the strings.
Oh, wow.
If the musician lifts the bow, the music ceases to exist instantly. Calvin asserts that God is actively driving the celestial frame. He's not just watching the sparrow fly. He's actively willing the aerodynamic lift under its wings in real time.
If you adopt that wound-up toy perspective, it leads to an incredibly cold, distant theology.
So cold.
Because if God only set things in motion and walked away, then human affairs are left entirely to arbitrary physical laws. We are at the mercy of chaotic, blind, natural forces.
And that is a terrifying place to be.
It creates a massive sense of cosmic isolation. If you get sick, it is just a biological malfunction. If you lose your job due to a recession, it is just macroeconomic gears grinding you down.
Which is the exact philosophical trap of the Epicurean.
The Epicureans.
Yeah, Calvin specifically calls out the Epicureans in these notes, labeling their worldview a catastrophic error.
For context, the Epicureans were ancient Greek philosophers.
Right. And they believed that the gods, if they existed at all, were entirely removed from the dirt, the grime, and the suffering of human existence.
They thought the gods were too good for us.
Basically, yeah. They believed the divine realm was too blessed and too pure to bother with the mundane details of Earth.
It sounds like ancient history, but that is the dominant worldview of the modern secular West.
It really is. We just use different terminology now. To counter that, Calvin brings in the Apostle Paul. When Paul is speaking in Athens, he tells the philosophers that in God we live and move and have our being.
Oh, right, in the book of Acts.
Yes. And notice the grammar there. That is not a past tense creation statement. That is a continuous present tense reality.
The notes also pull heavily from the Psalms. David observes this uninterrupted course of providence.
Yeah, the Psalms are full of it.
David points out that God gives creatures their food in due season, and when God takes away their breath, they die and return to the dust.
It is very direct.
It is direct, hands-on governance. The phrasing there is so active. God does not just allow their breath to fail. He actively takes it away.
If we pull back and look at the bigger picture here, accepting this premise completely alters how we must interpret seemingly random, chaotic events.
How so?
Well, if God is actively playing the instrument of the universe rather than just winding a clock, then every single note played has a specific intended purpose.
There are absolutely no accidental notes.
None at all. In a symphony governed by this kind of creator, an accident is impossible.
Which brings us into a massive collision with how we talk to each other every single day.
Oh, for sure.
We talk about being lucky, we talk about fortunate circumstances, we buy lottery tickets, we cross our fingers.
It is built into our language.
It is. But Calvin asserts that true providence is fundamentally opposed to fortuitous happenings. If providence is real, luck is a myth.
It requires a total paradigm shift. And Calvin leans on early church history here.
He brings in Basil the Great, right?
Yes. He highlights that Basil the Great, one of the brilliant Cappadocian fathers from the 4th century, explicitly called fortune and chance pagan terms.
Wow, pagan terms.
Yeah. Furthermore, Calvin notes that Augustine, perhaps the most influential theologian in Western history, later regretted ever using the word fortune in his earlier writings.
He actually retracted it.
He did. In his later works, Augustine realized that using the vocabulary of chance was a bad custom. He argued that when people ought to say God willed this, they instead default to saying fortune willed this.
And that robs the creator of his active governance.
So precisely. It gives the credit to an empty concept.
So why do we do it? I mean, why do humans cling so tightly to the idea of luck? Even religious people constantly talk about how lucky they are.
Psychologically, ascribing events to fortune is a highly effective defense mechanism.
A defense mechanism.
Think about it. It is a way to avoid looking for a divine cause. If something terrible happens, say a sudden financial collapse, and you call it bad luck, it absolves you from having to ask what the governor of the universe might be doing in that specific moment.
Oh, that makes sense. It lets you off the hook.
right? It removes the heavy weight of considering divine judgment, discipline, or testing.
And what about the positive side?
Conversely, if you land a massive promotion and call it good luck, you get to keep the glory.
You do not have to feel gratitude toward a divine provider.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
I mean, yes, spot on. You could just attribute it to your own hard work and being in the right place at the right time. But Calvin argues that if every success is a specific blessing and every adversity is a specific discipline or judgment, the concept of a random universe completely shatters.
But living in a world of chance creates so much anxiety.
It does.
If a falling tree or a sudden violent storm is just bad luck, then we are constantly at the mercy of chaotic, uncontrolled forces. We are dodging asteroids.
Always looking over our shoulders.
Right. Acknowledging divine regulation, according to this material, replaces that blind terror with a sense of purposeful order. Even if the order is painful, it is not arbitrary.
To illustrate this, the notes provide a rapid-fire list of scenarios that the average person would typically label as luck.
Yeah, let us go through those.
A merchant falling among thieves on a trade route. A massive merchant vessel destroyed by a sudden violent gale.
A shipwreck.
Right. Or a person crushed to death by a collapsing roof. Or, on the flip side, someone miraculously escaping a fatal car crash by a fraction of an inch.
People say, oh, he was so lucky.
Yeah, Calvin points out that carnal reason looks at all of these events and slaps the label of fortune on them.
Calvin spends a considerable amount of time analyzing one specific narrative. Imagine a merchant.
Okay.
He is traveling with a group of trustworthy companions, but for whatever reason, he unwisely wanders away from them into a dense forest.
Bad idea.
Very bad idea. He gets turned around, stumbles upon a robber's den, and is brutally killed. To humanize, to anyone reading the obituary in the local paper, it is tragic luck. He took a wrong turn. He should have stayed on the path.
That is what everyone would say.
But through the lens of Providence, Calvin argues that the boundaries of his life were previously fixed before he ever took a breath.
He quotes the book of Job, noting that bounds are fixed that man cannot pass.
Right.
The merchant's death was not just foreseen by a passive observer, it was determined by an active governor.
Okay, wait. I have to stop you there because I'm struggling with the implications of this.
I know, it is a lot.
If everything is decreed, why does it feel so incredibly random to us? If his boundaries were fixed, then his choices did not matter.
Oh, well.
Why even call it a wrong turn if he was scripted to take it? Doesn't this completely obliterate human free will? That is a terrifying thought for the listener. It makes us feel like puppets.
That is the natural friction everyone feels when encountering this doctrine.
It is a huge hurdle.
It is. Calvin anticipates this exact pushback. He introduces the concept that the true causes of events are hidden from us.
Hidden causes.
Yes, he argues that the reason, the order, the end goal, and the necessity of these things lie entirely hidden in a divine purpose that human opinions simply cannot apprehend.
So we just cannot see the whole board.
Right. We are demanding to read a script that has not been given to us. It does not obliterate human agency. The merchant still chose to walk into the woods. But it asserts that his choice was entirely enveloped within a sovereign decree.
So we are making real choices, but those choices are operating within a framework we cannot see.
Yes, that is a good way to frame it.
I'm trying to visualize this. It is like watching a highly complex stage play, but instead of sitting in the audience where you can see the narrative arc, you are hanging from the backstage rafters.
Oh, looking straight down.
Yeah, from that limited vantage point looking straight down, the actors' movements seem chaotic, people are running on and off stage, props are moving, lights are flashing.
All of a sudden?
It looks totally random, but there is a script driving every single step. We just cannot read the script from the rafters.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize the hidden causes. We call things chance only because the cause is secret to us.
Right.
It appears fortuitous by its own nature. It looks like a chaotic backstage scramble. But the lens of faith recognizes that a secret divine impulse is directing the end of every single movement.
So understanding that human tragedies and victories are not random naturally leads to massive questions about the physical world.
It definitely escalates.
If God is orchestrating human events like this merchant in the woods, what about the woods themselves? Do the trees grow on their own? Or is the biological process of photosynthesis also being micromanaged?
The material moves directly into the realm of natural autonomy to address that.
Natural autonomy.
Yeah. Calvin argues that inanimate objects possess natural properties, yes, but they do not exercise their effectiveness except as directed by a divine hand. They're instruments.
Let us expand on that idea of instruments. Calvin uses the sun as his primary example, right?
Exactly.
We all know the sun warms the earth, it draws forth seeds from the soil, it brings fruit to maturity. Modern science tells us this is a closed biological loop.
But Calvin pushes back hard against that post-Enlightenment scientific assumption. He states that a godly person will not make the sun the principal or necessary cause of those things.
The sun is not the boss.
Right. He points back to the scriptural timeline in the first chapter of Genesis, highlighting a detail most people read right past light and vegetation existed before the sun was even created.
That is wild to think about. The plants were created on day 3, but the sun was not created until day 4.
It throws a wrench in everything.
This completely upends our modern scientific reliance on primary causes. We worship the mechanism. We think the heat, the rain, and the soil are the ultimate providers of our food.
We give them all the credit.
Calvin is asking you to look past the physical mechanism and recognize the divine operator making those mechanisms effective.
It strips away the autonomy of nature entirely. The sun is not acting on a blind instinct of nature.
Yeah.
To prove this, Calvin points to massive historical miracles.
Oh, like Joshua.
Yes, he brings up Joshua commanding the sun to stand still for an entire day during a battle.
Which is mind-blowing.
And he points to King Hezekiah seeing the sun's shadow go backward 10 degrees on the steps.
Right, the shadow moving backward.
Calvin argues that God witnesses by those specific miracles that he himself governs the course of the sun daily. The miracles are not God stepping in to interrupt a self-running machine.
No.
No, the miracles are God choosing to operate his instrument in a highly unusual way to prove he was the one holding it all along.
So if God is the one holding the instrument, think about a scalpel.
Okay, a scalpel.
A scalpel in a surgeon's hand has a sharp edge. It possesses the natural property of sharpness. But the scalpel does not perform the surgery on its own.
Of course not. It just sits there.
Right, it sits on the metal tray until it is picked up. The sun, the rain, the soil, these are just the scalpels. God is the surgeon.
Spot on. And Calvin also points to the uneven diversity of the seasons to prove this.
Yes, so.
Well, spring follows winter, and summer follows spring, that is the natural property. But the weather patterns are wildly uneven from year to year.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Immoderate heat burns crops one year, while unseasonable, freezing rains damage the grain the next. This unevenness shows a daily special regulation.
Because if it was just a machine, it would be identical.
Yes. If the universe were just running on a free-flowing universal law of seasons, the yield would be identical every year. The variation proves the active granular regulation.
Seeing nature as an instrument in the hands of a surgeon reveals a type of omnipotence that is intimately involved in every minor detail of existence. It is not just big picture, galaxy spinning stuff.
Calvin completely redefines omnipotence for us here. He pushes back against the idea of an empty, unconscious capability.
Unconscious capability, like a battery.
Exactly. He says omnipotence is a watchful, effective, and active regulation of individual and particular motions.
Not a general principle of confused motion. God does not just command a river to flow and then look away while the water crashes down the mountain.
No.
He is governing the individual drops of water.
Calvin heavily critiques the idea of a universal providence that revolves the universe but ignores individual creatures.
It is too broad.
The argument is that if God only set a universal law, humanity would be miserably exposed to every movement of the sky and earth. We would be victims of the machine.
Victims of the gears.
Right. True omnipotence means regulating all things so nothing happens without deliberation.
Think about the listener right now, checking their retirement account or looking at a frightening medical diagnosis.
Yeah.
If this material is right, statistical probability does not exist for them. How does someone actually live like that on a Tuesday morning?
It changes everything.
The psychological comfort this offers in adversity is massive. Believers can rest safely knowing that harmful things are curbed by a divine authority. It removes the superstitious fear of the unknown.
You're not dodging asteroids anymore.
Right. You are not at the mercy of a rogue cancer cell or a volatile stock market. You are in the hands of the governor.
Calvin gives a very intimate physical example of this granular regulation. He talks about a nursing mother.
Oh.
He observes that some mothers have abundant milk, while others are almost dry. He uses this to illustrate a highly specific individual regulation of nourishment.
It is not just a biological given.
It's not just a matter of diet or genetics. Calvin argues it is a divine decision to feed one infant more liberally and another more meagerly, for reasons hidden in the divine counsel.
He also brings up the prophet Jeremiah, who warned the people not to fear the stars and signs of heaven.
People in the ancient world loved their signs.
They were looking at comets, eclipses, and constellations, and they were transferring authority away from the creator to the creation.
Yes, the unbelievers fancied that their misery or bliss depended on the stars. Calvin calls this infidelity.
Infidelity. That is a strong word.
He commands the reader to remember there is no erratic motion in creatures. Everything happens because it is knowingly and willingly decreed.
We might scoff at ancient people fearing comets, but we do the exact same thing today.
We absolutely do.
We obsess over astrology, personality types, economic forecasts, and algorithmic modeling, desperately trying to predict our fate.
We want the data.
Yeah. How does resting in this granular omnipotence free you from the exhausting cycle of trying to predict the future?
Trying to predict the future through these signs is an attempt to gain control in a universe you believe is ruled by chaotic forces. If you are dodging asteroids, you need a really good radar system.
That makes total sense.
But if you accept that a watchful, deliberate intelligence is regulating every motion, the need to predict the future vanishes entirely.
Because you trust the pilot.
Yes. You do not need to know what will happen tomorrow if you implicitly trust the character of the one who is orchestrating it. The crushing burden of control is lifted off your shoulders.
So if God regulates the stars, the seasons, the rain, and human biology, how much more does he regulate the seemingly autonomous decisions and accidents of human beings?
Calvin is crystal clear on this point. He states that mankind's steps are not their own.
Not their own.
God gives not only the capability to move, but determines the choice and the direction of the movement.
We are back to that concept of hidden causes.
Yes, we are.
Events seem fortuitous because the necessity lies hidden in a divine purpose. But how does this play out in everyday human planning? We all set goals. We write 5-year plans.
Calvin calls it an absurd folly for humans to set goals without regard to God. He quotes King Solomon from the book of Proverbs, saying the disposition of the heart is man's, but the preparation of the tongue is the Lord's.
The preparation of the tongue.
The argument is that humans cannot even formulate a sentence or speak a word except as he wills. This demands a staggering shift in human humility. Your intellect, your persuasion, your very speech are actively governed.
Calvin throws out several rapid-fire scriptural examples to prove this mechanism of hidden causes. Let us unpack a few of them.
Okay, let us do it.
In Exodus 21, there is a law regarding a man chopping wood. The head of the axe flies off the handle, or a branch breaks off a tree, and it strikes a passing traveler, killing him.
Right.
Modern society would say, wow, tragic accident, wrong place, wrong time, pure negligence.
Or a freak accident.
Yeah. But Calvin points out that the scripture explicitly says God delivered the man to the hand of the slayer. The broken branch was not a mechanical failure, it was a divine execution.
He also mentions Proverbs 29, the poor man and the usurer, the lender, meeting together.
Just bumping into each other.
It looks like a random encounter on a busy street, two men bumping into each other in a crowded market. But Solomon writes that their meeting is divinely assigned.
Wow.
And then Calvin points to an incredibly bizarre story involving the Philistine soothsayers.
I want to dive into that Philistine story because it perfectly illustrates this idea of testing for hidden causes.
It is a fascinating narrative.
The Ark of the Covenant has been captured. The Philistines are getting hit with massive plagues, tumors, and panic.
Things are going very badly for them.
So they consult their soothsayers, their pagan priests, and these priests set up a highly specific, almost scientific test to determine if the plagues are chance or divine intent.
Right. The priests say, let us take 2 milk cows that have never been yoked.
Okay.
We will take their calves away and lock them in the barn. We will hitch these mother cows to a cart carrying the ark, and we will see where they go.
Testing the biology.
Naturally, biologically, a mother cow will turn back toward her crying calf. That is the biological law of maternal instinct. If the cows go back to the barn, the priests say the plagues were just a chance biological occurrence.
But the cows do not go back to the barn.
They do not.
They walk straight down the road, away from their calves, toward the Israelite town of Beth Shemesh, lowing as they go. They are visibly fighting their own biological programming, yet moving in a straight line.
The soothsayers were trying to isolate a hidden cause.
And the result proved that what looked like a random plague was actually directed by a specific, sovereign hand overriding natural law.
Calvin uses this to show that even the animal kingdom is fully subservient to the secret impulse of providence. And he transitions from cows to kings, pointing to the dramatic timing of David in the wilderness of Moma.
This is one of the most cinematic moments in the Old Testament.
It really is.
Saul has David completely trapped. David is literally on one side of a mountain, and Saul's army is wrapping around the other side, closing the net.
He is cornered.
David is minutes away from capture and execution. And at that precise, microscopic moment, a messenger arrives on horseback and tells Saul, "You need to leave right now. The Philistines have invaded the land."
Timing is unbelievable.
Saul drops the pursuit and leaves. From the rafters, it looks sudden and lucky. It looks like an unbelievable coincidence.
But faith recognizes that messenger's arrival is a secret impulse from God. God orchestrated the Philistine invasion, the messenger's horse, and the exact timing of the delivery to spare David's life.
But the example that really encapsulates this entire argument, and honestly messes with my head the most, is the casting of lots.
Ah, yes. Proverbs 16.
Proverbs 16 says the pebbles are passed into the lap, but the determining of them comes from the Lord.
This is where Calvin completely shatters our modern concept of probability.
Let us really unpack this. The casting of lots is the universal symbol of randomness. It is rolling dice at a casino table.
Drawing straws.
Yeah, flipping a coin at the start of a football game. We use these methods specifically when we want an outcome devoid of human bias. We want pure chance.
It is the whole point of doing it.
Yet Calvin claims the result of that tossed pebble, the way the coin lands, is entirely decided by divine will.
In a statistical model, rolling a six-sided die gives you a 1 in 6 chance for any specific number. We view that as an immutable mathematical property of the universe.
It is just math.
But Calvin argues that mathematics only describes the historical pattern. It does not dictate the physical outcome in the present moment.
Wow, okay.
Every single roll of the die, every single coin flip, the exact trajectory of every pebble bouncing in a cup is a specific, deliberate choice made by the creator in that microsecond.
So there is no randomness anywhere.
There is no such thing as a statistical anomaly in this framework. There is only divine intent. When you flip a coin, God decides if it is heads or tails.
Think about what that does to the concept of gambling or statistical risk assessment. It means there is no such thing as luck. The casino is not running on probability, it is running on providence.
Which is a wild thought.
This collision of physical probability and divine will brings up a crucial theological distinction in the notes, the difference between relative necessity and absolute necessity. And we need to explain this clearly.
This is a vital philosophical distinction. Think of relative necessity as the standard laws of physics.
Okay.
If you hit a pane of glass with a hammer, it will break. That is a relative truth based on the physical properties of glass and steel.
Makes sense.
But absolute necessity is God's sovereign decree. What is determined by God must take place, even if it is not unconditionally necessary by its own physical nature.
How does that work?
Well, if God decrees a piece of glass will not break, the absolute necessity overrides the relative necessity. The hammer falls, but the physics are momentarily suspended or redirected to fulfill the decree.
Calvin applies this concept to the mechanics of human sustenance. Bread.
We eat it every day.
We look at the nutritional label. Bread is naturally, physically meant to nourish our bodies with carbohydrates and calories. That is its relative property.
But Calvin insists that men do not live by bread alone. He states that the produce of the earth is a special gift.
It is not just chemistry.
Right. It is not the physical plenty itself that nourishes men. It is not the caloric intake, but a secret blessing attached to the food.
And conversely, he quotes the prophet Isaiah, threatening that God will take away the stay of bread, meaning a curse can be applied to the food.
The bread loses its strength.
You could eat the bread, you could consume the thousands of calories, but it provides zero physical sustenance. Your body would waste away while your stomach is full.
Which forces us to reconsider how we approach modern conveniences. We rely heavily on medicine, agriculture, and insulated housing, assuming they inherently possess the ability to sustain us.
We trust the chemical compounds in a pharmaceutical pill to lower our blood pressure. We trust the HVAC system to keep us warm. But Calvin demands we realize those things are completely useless apart from a continuous divine command.
They're just instruments.
The medicine only works because the surgeon is actively holding the scalpel. If God removes the secret blessing from the chemical compound, the pill does absolutely nothing.
The most potent, staggering illustration of this absolute versus relative necessity in Calvin's writing is the physical bones of Jesus Christ during the crucifixion.
Yes, let us look at this closely. When the Word became flesh, he took on a real human body. His bones were physically, naturally fragile. They were made of calcium and marrow.
That's like ours.
If you hit them with a heavy iron mallet, they were highly capable of breaking under that blunt force.
Yet, during the crucifixion, the Roman soldiers came to speed up the deaths before the Sabbath. They took iron mallets and shattered the legs of the two men hanging next to him.
Horrible.
But when they came to Christ, they found he was already dead, so they did not break his legs. Calvin points out that according to the Old Testament prophecy, it was entirely impossible for his bones to be broken.
So, I have to ask you to clarify this tension. If Christ's bones were physically fragile like ours, how could it be impossible for the soldiers to break them?
That is the big question.
Does the divine decree turn his bones into adamantium, overriding the laws of physics?
No, it does not change the chemical composition of the bone. It restricts the necessity of its own plan over what could have happened naturally.
Okay, unpack that.
The divine governor so ordered the microscopic events, the specific timing of Christ yielding his spirit, the exact psychological decisions of the Roman soldiers to pierce his side, instead of swinging the mallet, that the breaking simply would not occur.
So the physics are still there.
The laws of physics regarding calcium and iron remain completely intact, but they are fully subservient to the secret, absolute plan.
We see this exact same mechanism with the quail in the desert. Millions of birds brought by a specifically stirred south wind right to the Israelite camp.
Yeah, the wind just brought them in.
We see it with Jonah's specific whirlwind on the sea, isolating one ship in the Mediterranean.
Out of all the ships.
Right. We see it when Jacob tells Rachel, who is struggling with infertility, that offspring is a specific divine gift, not just biology taking its natural course.
Every single instance, from the weather to human reproduction, points back to Calvin's core argument. God's general providence not only flourishes among creatures to continue the order of nature, but is wonderfully adapted to a definite and proper end.
So let us synthesize all of these primary arguments for the listener. If you take this theology seriously, there is no idle creator. There is no blind chance. There is no autonomous nature. Every raindrop that hits your windshield, every falling branch in the woods, every rolled die on a board game, and every macroeconomic shift is governed by a watchful, deliberate intelligence.
It is breathtaking when you really grasp it.
Things appear random and chaotic to us only because of our extremely limited vision from those backstage rafters.
It is a massive shift in perspective. It challenges the listener to completely reevaluate their physical reality, tearing down the wall between the secular and the sacred.
I challenge you to look at tomorrow's weather forecast, or your next unexpected delay in traffic, or a surprising financial expense through this new lens.
Try it for just one day.
Instead of cursing your bad luck or praising your good fortune when things go well, recognize the deliberate hand at work. The governor is actively playing the instrument.
And here is a final thought for you to mull over, building on what we have discussed today. If our very words, the safety of our fragile bodies, and the actual caloric nourishment we derive from our daily meals rely entirely on a continuous, secret blessing rather than the cold mechanics of nature,
Yeah.
how should this alter our posture during something as mundane as eating lunch? Are we too conditioned to only pray for the impossible rescues, the cancer healings, the financial windfalls, completely ignoring the fact that the mundane, ordinary functioning of our digestive systems requires a miracle of active governance every single second?
It makes you wonder, if your body digesting a sandwich requires the active, continuous will of the creator of the universe, then there is truly no such thing as an ordinary moment. The next time you spill your coffee, maybe it is not a disaster. Maybe it is just the first deliberate note in a brand new symphony. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.